as it is Iran that controls the critical state of Hormuz. So as we keep an eye on the White House, waiting for Donald Trump to appear, possibly from the Oval Office, let's bring in Katie Nicholson, who is in our Washington bureau. So, Katie, we were listening to Janice Stein. We were listening to Marie Brewster talk about the potential for NATO. Can you talk about how the Americans have been feeling about this war and whether that's been shifting?
Yeah, I mean, it really has been interesting to watch. There was no, as you have said previously, attempt to sell this to the American people before this invasion, or rather this conflict began. I can sort of see that the cameras just out of the corner of my eye are just opening here.
Yeah, why don't
we? I can see the president walking towards the podium. Let's pick this up.
Katie, why? Exactly. So let's just have a listen to Donald Trump here.
Thank you very much. My fellow Americans, good evening. Let me begin by congratulating the team at NASA and our brave astronauts on the successful launch of Artemis II. It was quite something. It will be traveling further than any manned rocket has ever flown and will very substantially pass the moon, go around it, and come back home from a distance that has never been done before. It's amazing. They are on the way, and God bless them. These are brave people. We want to God bless those 4 unbelievable astronauts. As we speak this evening, it's been just 1 month since the United States military began Operation Epic Fury, targeting the world's #1 state sponsor of terror, Iran. In these past 4 weeks, our armed forces have delivered swift, decisive, overwhelming victories on the battlefield. Victories like few people have ever seen before. Tonight, Iran's Navy is gone. Their Air Force is in ruins. Their leaders, most of them terrorist regime they led, are now dead. Their command and control of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps is being decimated as we speak. Their ability to launch missiles and drones is dramatically curtailed, and their weapons, factories, and rocket launchers are being blown to pieces. Very few of them left. Never in the history of warfare has an enemy suffered such clear and devastating large-scale losses in a matter of weeks. Our enemies are losing in America, as it has been for 5 years under my presidency, is winning, and now winning bigger than ever before. Before discussing this current situation, I also want to thank our troops for the masterful job they did in taking the country of Venezuela in a matter of minutes. That hit was quick, lethal, violent, and respected by everyone all over the world. After rebuilding our military during my first term, we have by far the strongest military anywhere in the world, and now we're working along with Venezuela and are, in a true sense, joint venture partners. We're getting along incredibly well in the production and sale of massive amounts of oil and gas, the second largest reserves on Earth after the United States of America. We're now totally independent of the Middle East, and yet we are there to help. We don't have to be there. We don't need their oil. We don't need anything they have, but we're there to help our allies. Tonight, I want to provide an update on the tremendous progress our warriors have made in Iran and discuss why Operation Epic Fury is necessary for the safety of America and the security of the free world. From the very first day I announced my campaign for president in 2015, I have vowed that I would never allow Iran to have a nuclear weapon. This fanatical regime has been chanting death to America, death to Israel for 47 years. Their proxies were behind the murder of 241 Americans in the Marine barracks bombing in Beirut, the slaughter of hundreds of our service members with roadside bombs. They were involved in the attack on the USS Cole, and they carried out the countless other heinous acts, including the just horrible, bloody atrocities of October 7th in Israel. something that most people have never seen anything like it. This murderous regime also recently killed 45,000 of their own people who were protesting in Iran. 45,000 dead. For these terrorists to have nuclear weapons would be an intolerable threat. The most violent and thuggish regime on earth would be free to carry out their campaigns of terror, coercion, conquest, and mass murder from behind a nuclear shield. I will never let that happen, and neither should any of our past presidents. This situation has been going on for 47 years and should have been handled long before I arrived in office. I did many things during my 2 terms in office to stop the quest for nuclear weapons by Iran first, and perhaps most importantly, I killed General Qasem Soleimani in my first term. He was an evil genius, brilliant person, a horrible human being, however, the father of the roadside bomb, and he lived just horrible what he did. Iran would have been perhaps in far better, stronger position. Had he lived, we would have had probably a different conversation tonight. But you know what? We'd still be winning and winning big. And then, very importantly, I terminated Barack Hussein Obama's Iran nuclear deal, a disaster. Obama gave them $1.7 billion in cash, green cash. Took it out of banks from Virginia, D.C., and Maryland, all the cash they had. He flew it by airplanes in an attempt to buy their respect and loyalty, but it didn't work. They laughed at our president and went on with their mission to have a nuclear bomb. His Iran deal would have led to a colossal arsenal of massive nuclear weapons for Iran, and they would have had them years ago, and they would have used them. It would have been a different world. There would have been no Middle East and no Israel right now, in my opinion, the opinion of a lot of great experts, had I not terminated that terrible deal. And I was so honored to do it. I was so proud to do it. It was so bad right from the beginning. Essentially, I did what no other president was willing to do. They made mistakes, and I am correcting them. My first preference was always the path of diplomacy, yet the regime continued their relentless quest for nuclear weapons and rejected every attempt at an agreement. For this reason, in June, I ordered a strike on Iran's key nuclear facilities, an Operation Midnight Hammer. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. Those beautiful B-2 bombers performed magnificently. We totally obliterated those nuclear sites. The regime then sought to rebuild their nuclear program at a totally different location, making clear they had no intention of abandoning their pursuit of nuclear weapons. They were also rapidly building a vast stockpile of conventional ballistic missiles and would soon have had missiles that could reach the American homeland, Europe, and virtually any other place on Earth. Iran's strategy was so obvious. They wanted to produce as many missiles as possible, and they did, with the longest range possible, and they had some weapons that nobody believed they had. We just learned that out. We took them out. We took them all out so that no one would really dare stop them. And their race for a nuclear bomb, a nuclear weapon like nobody's ever seen before. They were right at the doorstep. For years, everyone has said that Iran cannot have nuclear weapons, but in the end, those are just words if you're not willing to take action when the time comes. As I stated in my announcement of Operation Epic Fury, our objectives are very simple and clear. We are systematically dismantling the regime's ability to threaten America or project power outside of their borders. That means eliminating Iran's Navy, which is now absolutely destroyed, hurting their Air Force and their missile program at levels never seen before, and annihilating their defense industrial base. We've done all of it. Their Navy is gone, their Air Force is gone, their missiles are just about used up or beaten. Taken together, these actions will cripple Iran military, crush their ability to support terrorist proxies, and deny them the ability to build a nuclear bomb. Our armed forces have been extraordinary. There's never been anything like it militarily. Everyone is talking about it, and tonight I'm pleased to say that these core strategic objectives are nearing completion. As we celebrate this progress, we think especially of the 13 American warriors who have laid down their lives in this fight to prevent our children from ever having to face a nuclear Iran. Twice this past month, I've traveled to Dover Air Force Base, and it's been something. I wanted to be with those heroes as they return to American soil, and I was with them and their families, their parents, their wives, their husbands. We salute them, and now we must honor them by completing the mission for which they gave their lives. And every single one of the people, their loved ones said, "Please, sir, please finish the job," every one of them. And we are going to finish the job, and we're going to finish it very fast. We're getting very close. I want to thank our allies in the Middle East, Israel, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, the UAE, Kuwait, and Bahrain. They've been great, and we will not let them get hurt or fail in any way, shape, or form. Many Americans have been concerned to see the recent rise in gasoline prices here at home. This short-term increase has been entirely the result of the Iranian regime launching deranged terror attacks against commercial oil tankers in neighboring countries that have nothing to do with the conflict. This is yet more proof that Iran can never be trusted with nuclear weapons. They will use them, and they will use them quickly. It would lead to decades of extortion, economic pain, and instability worse than we can ever imagine. The United States has never been better prepared economically to confront this threat. You all know that. We built the strongest economy in history. We're going through it right now, the strongest in history. In 1 year, we've taken a dead and crippled country. I hate to say that, but we were a dead and crippled country after the last administration and made it the hottest country anywhere in the world by far, with no inflation, record-setting investments coming into the United States, over $18 trillion, and the highest stock market ever, with 53 all-time record highs in just 1 year. It all positioned us to get rid of a cancer that has long simmered. It's known as the nuclear Iran, and they didn't know what was coming. They've never imagined it. Remember, because of our Drill Baby Drill program, America has plenty of gas. We have so much gas. Under my leadership, we are #1 producer of oil and gas on the planet, without even discussing the millions of barrels that we're getting from Venezuela. Because of the Trump administration's policies, we produce more oil and gas than Saudi Arabia and Russia combined. Think of that, Saudi Arabia and Russia combined. And that number will soon be substantially higher than that. There's no country like us anywhere in the world, and we're in great shape for the future. The United States imports almost no oil through the Hormuz Strait and won't be taking any in the future. We don't need it. We haven't needed it, and we don't need it. We've beaten and completely decimated Iran. They are decimated, both militarily and economically and in every other way. And the countries of the world that do receive oil through the Hormuz Strait must take care of that passage. They must cherish it. They must grab it and cherish it. They can do it easily. We will be helpful, but they should take the lead in protecting the oil that they so desperately depend on. So to those countries that can't get fuel, many of which refuse to get involved in the decapitation of Iran, we had to do it ourselves. I have a suggestion. #1, buy oil from the United States of America. We have plenty. We have so much. And #2, build up some delayed courage. Should have done it before. Should have done it with us, as we asked. Go to the Strait and just take it, protect it, use it for yourselves. Iran has been essentially decimated. The hard part is done, so it should be easy. And in any event, when this conflict is over, the Strait will open up naturally. It'll just open up naturally. They're going to want to be able to sell oil because that's all they have to try and rebuild. It will resume the flowing and the gas prices will rapidly come back down. Stock prices will rapidly go back up. They haven't come down very much, frankly. They came down a little bit, but they've had some very good days over the last couple of days. We've done actually much better than I thought, but we had to take that little journey to Iran to get rid of this horrible threat. With our historic tax cuts, where people are just now talking about receiving larger refunds than they ever thought possible. They are getting so much more money than they thought. That's from the great, big, beautiful bill. Our economy is strong and improving by the day, and it will soon be roaring back like never before. It will top the levels that it was a month ago. I've made clear from the beginning of Operation Epic Fury that we will continue until our objectives are fully achieved. Thanks to the progress we've made, I can say tonight that we are on track to complete all of America's military objectives shortly, very shortly. We're going to hit them extremely hard over the next 2 to 3 weeks. We're going to bring them back to the Stone Ages where they belong. In the meantime, discussions are ongoing. Regime change was not our goal. We never said regime change, but regime change has occurred because of all of their original leaders' death. They're all dead. The new group is less radical and much more reasonable. Yet if during this period of time no deal is made, we have our eyes on key targets. If there is no deal, we are going to hit each and every one of their electric generating plants very hard and probably simultaneously. We have not hit their oil, even though that's the easiest target of all, because it would not give them even a small chance of survival or rebuilding. But we could hit it, and it would be gone, and there's not a thing they could do about it. They have no anti-aircraft equipment. Their radar is 100% annihilated. We are unstoppable as a military force. The nuclear sites that we obliterated with the B-2 bombers have been hit so hard that it would take months to get near the nuclear dust, and we have it under intense satellite surveillance and control. If we see them make a move, even a move for it, we'll hit them with missiles very hard again. We have all the cards, they have none. It's very important that we keep this conflict in perspective. American involvement in World War I lasted 1 year, 7 months, and 5 days. World War II lasted for 3 years, 8 months, and 25 days. The Korean War lasted for 3 years, 1 month, and 2 days. The Vietnam War lasted for 19 years, 5 months, and 29 days. Iraq went on for 8 years, 8 months, and 28 days. We are in this military operation, so powerful, so brilliant, against one of the most powerful countries for 32 days. And the country has been eviscerated and essentially is really no longer a threat. They were the bully of the Middle East, but they're the bully no longer. This is a true investment in your children and your grandchildren's future. The whole world is watching, and they can't leave the power, strength, and brilliance. They just can't believe what they're seeing. They leave it to your imagination, but they can't believe what they're seeing, the brilliance of the United States military. Tonight, every American can look forward to a day when we are finally free from the wickedness of Iranian aggression and the specter of nuclear blackmail. Because of the actions we have taken, we are on the cusp of ending Iran's sinister threat to America and the world. And I'll tell you, the world is watching. And when we do, when it's all over, the United States will be safer, stronger, more prosperous, and greater than it has ever been before. May God bless the men and women of the United States Armed Forces, and may God bless the United States of America. Thank you very much, and good night.
Well, with barely 30 seconds to acknowledge NASA's mission to space, with praise for those astronauts, he then turned to the war, praising what he called the strongest military in the world, went on to describe the status on Iran. He said, never in the history of warfare has an enemy suffered such losses in a matter of weeks. He offered an update on why the war is important, said it's nearing completion, but not that it is over. Effectively, more than a month in, this was a pitch for the war to happen, a pitch to the American people that didn't happen before the war or even the first days of it. For these terrorists, he said, to have nuclear weapons would be an intolerable threat, going on to say, I will never let that happen. He talked of how past presidents had failed, made mistakes, how he's correcting those mistakes. And he acknowledged the American soldiers lost and said, quote, that we must honor them by completing the mission that they gave their lives to. So where does this leave everyone here? Effectively, he was saying that the war will end shortly. In a matter of weeks, he maintained that there is still to fight, but he didn't say that it was over right now. On the matter of the Strait of Hormuz, this was interesting. He said that the countries of the world that receive oil must take the lead in protecting the oil they rely on. I have a suggestion. He said, buy oil from the U.S., and number two, get some delayed courage and go to the Strait and take the oil yourself. He said the Strait will eventually open up naturally when this is over. So there was a lot more to the statement. There often is a lot more to these statements, a lot more implications of what he said for the American people, for people around the world who are waiting for this war to be over, waiting for the financial consequences of the war to be over as well. So for more on this, why don't we go right to Washington, where Katie Nicholson was standing by and listening in, as were we. What were your thoughts there, Katie?
Adrienne, I think what struck me is I don't understand why he needed prime time to effectively repeat much of what he has been posting and saying over the last couple of weeks on social media. And a lot of what he said there echoed the original video that he had posted back on February 28th, making that case going back 47 years as to why this conflict started. Notable as well, just how he sort of repeated that one post that really was a bit of a flashpoint earlier this week, as you noted, that, you know, if you want to get oil and you're not able to get it currently, come buy it from us, or get some courage and go into the Strait yourself. That kind of sort of adversarial language, sort of very interesting. What to me stuck out as what wasn't said, right? So this had sort of been set up by many as something that was going to give us a sense of what was going to happen next. Certainly there has been an indication that there is going to be a stepping up of some sort of engagement in the next 2 or 3 weeks. And he didn't give us any of the specifics as to what that's going to look like. And he's sticking again with this 2 to 3 week timeline, which is, again, a timeline that he has floated many times. And again, it's that same type of language. It's going to end very soon, up to more than a dozen times since this conflict began. So not a whole lot new here really jumping out at me tonight, Adrienne. And it's sort of interesting that at this point, at this stage, he would feel the need to have a prime time address to essentially repeat a lot of the same talking points that he's already raised.
It's interesting you talk about the 2 weeks, Katie. I was looking, there was a report from JP Morgan today that was saying that the point at which the effects of the closures of the Strait of Hormuz, not closures, the Iranian control of the Strait of Hormuz will be felt in North America will be April the 15th. That is 2 weeks today. So he is suggesting that within 2 weeks from today, this will be ending, but that is when the Americans, in particular, are likely to feel the biggest effect. Again, can we talk about what polling has been saying broadly here? How do the Americans feel about this? What is your sense about how they're likely to receive this tonight?
This has been bottoming out in the polls. There is very little public support, almost none for this. And it's also really had a drag effect on the president's approval numbers as well. There's some polling that suggests he is sort of at an all-time low in the polls right now. So, and this is the issue that is really dragging him down right now. We've got to remember, this is a president that had campaigned on no more more of these foreign entanglements. And this is quite different than Venezuela, which I think a lot of people eventually got on board with because it was very quick. This looks to be a much more dragged out, complicated thing, and it is hitting people very quickly in the pocketbooks when they go to the gas pumps. And not just here in this country. There are going to be spill-out effects for this, and whatever happens with the Strait of Hormuz, this sort of notion that he may abdicate any responsibility and the U.S. may leave it up to countries that need helium and petroleum products that transit through the Strait of Hormuz. Well, we heard from European ministers yesterday, the finance ministers, essentially getting people to get into a bit of a scarcity mindset because their points were that because of this conflict, the economic pain and the scarcity, this is going to continue well beyond this conflict because of damage that has been done in the area.
You know, it's a good point there, Katie, and you talked about the timeline there. I know Donald Trump's, well, I have the impression that he meant to comfort people by saying it's going to be a matter of weeks, but he then went on to say, listen, the First World War, we were involved for years. Second World War for years. Korea, Vietnam, Iraq, that was years. This has only been 32 days. I'm not entirely sure people will be comforted to hear references to world wars in the same sentence as this one, but we will see how they handle this. All right, Katie Nicholson in Washington. We'll be back to you in a bit. Katie, thanks. Now, the attacks inside Iran by both the United States and Israeli military forces have been met with strikes from Iran and its proxies in the Gulf states and in Israel. So obviously there will be huge interest across the entire region with Trump's message tonight. Sasha Petrusik is in Jerusalem. Sasha, can we start with Israel? How might it receive Trump's message tonight?
I think Israelis were looking for the same thing that all of us were, some indication about what the future holds and what the U.S. involvement is going to be. We didn't get many hints of that, as you mentioned, but, you know, Israel's looking at this, I guess, from a slightly different perspective, not so much from the cost of oil and the cost of living, although obviously that's a concern as well. But how long are they going to have the United States as a major partner in this fight, which they see as existential? This fight against Iran, which Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has been talking about for years now, that it has to be done, that all of the things that Donald Trump talked about needed to be done against Iran to get rid of their ballistic missiles, to get rid of the nuclear program, those kinds of things. And I'm not sure that Israelis will wake up as they do in the next few hours here and find this especially comforting any more than perhaps Americans are, because this is a sort of a signal that while there will be more strikes, that as far as Donald Trump is concerned, you know, this battle is almost over, that Iran is powerless. And Israelis see that very differently. They don't see a powerless Iran. They see a country that they're going to have to be dealing with for many years to come, and possibly alone. Not just Iran, but its proxies, Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, potentially Hamas in Gaza, if you know, that forgotten war in the opposite side of Israel here. So they are watching with that perspective.
You know, when you talked about people potentially not being comforted by it, it has also been one of the heaviest days of strikes there throughout the 32 days of war. Can you give us a sense of what that's been like?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, central Israel, the Tel Aviv area, its suburbs, northern Israel, which has been under the threat of many rockets from Hezbollah in Lebanon for many days and these past 4 weeks, most of the past 4 weeks. You know, they actually saw a lot of what they have been fearing. The number of rockets coming from Iran, the number of ballistic missiles, drones, those have reduced. Those have gone down, the numbers, over the past few weeks, perhaps because Iran is running out, perhaps not. But tonight we saw a very opposite message coming from Iran, a very strong hit, 10 ballistic missiles, at least just tonight. More earlier today. The sirens were going off pretty much all day in many areas, and we even saw Hezbollah firing rockets toward the south of Israel, which is unusual, sort of going straight overhead. Many people here see that obviously as a threat. Some people were injured today. There was damage, but they also see it as a message that there's a very clear defiance coming from both Hezbollah in the north and from Iran. And I guess they are reading into that Iran is not about to sort of roll over the way that perhaps we are getting from Donald Trump tonight.
Sasha, listening to you talk, I think about the Gulf states as well. When we were in Saudi not long ago, they made it very clear that they didn't want this war to start, but now that it had started, they wanted it to be decisive, because the great fear in the Gulf is a wounded and angry Iran that still has the capability of lashing out. What is your sense of how Trump's message is going to be landing in the Gulf in the morning when they wake up?
Well, there was only a very small mention of the allies in the region in that speech, and he said that one of his priorities was that no one is going to be hurt in any way. Obviously, they have been targets. They've been going through a lot as well, and dealing with many of these ballistic missiles and other attacks from drones. But I think you're right. I think that in the Gulf, people want to see some kind of an end. They want to see this finishing and not just dragging out over a much longer period of time. I think one of the other big fears is that Trump will wash his hands of this, that he will get tired of this war, or perhaps because of domestic political considerations will abandon it and will leave it to others to clean up. He suggested Europeans, he suggested perhaps China, Japan, Korea could step in, and there have been some talks, but we're very far away from that. And I think everybody's trying to see what it is that the United States is going to do, especially since for many of these countries, I mean, they have a U.S. presence there. They have U.S. bases. Many of them feel that that's part of the reason, a main part of the reason why they've been targeted by Iran. And so, they've been hosting these forces there partly for their own defense. They haven't seen that. One interesting thing I thought from the speech is we did not hear from Donald Trump these repetitions about Iran being pleading for a ceasefire and wanting some sort of negotiations and something like that. U.S. media, the New York Times, has been reporting that Iran is much more defiant, and I'm seeing that too in some of the messaging that's come out of Iran even today. Some of what they've been sending out, Iranian state TV sending out streeters, interviews with people on the streets, all of them with that kind of message. We are defiant. We don't want to negotiate. We don't want to finish this except on our own terms. That's the message that's coming out of Iran at that ground level. And in terms of what they're putting out in terms of media, this does not sound like a regime that is pleading for a ceasefire. And maybe from Trump's own words tonight, or the lack of those words, maybe we can read into something like that too, that they're not getting the kind of signals from Tehran that they thought they were getting or that they wanted to present over the last few days.
Indeed. Thank you for that analysis, Sasha. I appreciate it. That is Sasha Petrusik in Jerusalem tonight. So our defense specialist is Murray Brewster. Murray was listening to President Trump with everyone else. I bet you're out of ink with how much you were writing with that pen of yours. Lots of talk about the U.S. accomplishing its objectives. What is your take on that?
Well, there was a ton of talk about the objectives and how much the missiles had been obliterated, how much the Navy had been sent to the bottom. A lot of things that we had heard already, but there were very few specifics on what military objectives are left for the United States to achieve in this conflict. This is the aspect that I was waiting for. And what we received was mostly just a laundry list of what the U.S. says it has accomplished thus far. So I'm really flummoxed because it's not entirely clear, if you take Trump at his word, that these capabilities that Iran had to be able to hold the region and perhaps other parts of the world hostage have been eliminated. Then what's left to do? And in these sort of speeches, you sort of expect the president to be able to outline what the next steps in the campaign are all about and what sort of sacrifices may be needed to get to that level. We had none of that this evening at all, Adrian.
There were some significant things that weren't said by Trump tonight, Murray.
Well, what I was waiting for was the NATO bashing and to perhaps bully or coerce allies into beginning to police the Strait of Hormuz. And that was really a velvet touch, basically saying to nations that have a stake in the region to police it themselves. And there's an echo in some of his comments of some things I heard very early in this U.S. campaign from former military and also from senior defense officials here. And that was the concern that the U.S. was going to go in, it was going to have limited objectives, and it was going to bomb certain areas and not follow in with ground troops at all. But then President Trump was going to declare victory and walk away. And if there's anything that I take away from tonight's address, it's that he's outlining what he feels the U.S. has accomplished, and he's perhaps laying the groundwork for being able to walk away.
All right, we will see. Thank you for that. That's Murray Brewster in Ottawa.
You're welcome.
We have continuing coverage on Trump's speech straight ahead. Stay with us.
A telescreen is what George Orwell called it in his apocalyptic vision of the 80s, 1984. A telescreen was sort of a two-way television set, a spy that could look and listen as well as show. The world of 1984 was wired, and no one ever knew